of Sales Shift. So before I get started and introduce myself to you, I just kind of like to get a little bit of feedback in terms of why you're here, what you'd like to get out of today. So who would like to start? Come on now, don't be shy.
I'm here as an entrepreneur. I don't have a background in sales, but like you mentioned, I'm in sales because I'm an entrepreneur, so just looking to hone those skills.
Okay, absolutely.
I originally about a year ago, I started in sales. I've been in product management, and support, a lot of different roles.
Okay.
I'm going more into direct sales
Okay.
with another company, so that's why I'm here. I'm learning the process. I've learned the past various methodologies, but looking to always learn.
Oh, absolutely. And plus, going from the product side of things, where you knew everything about the product, now you need to understand the customer, right?
Yeah.
Who else? Anybody else like to share?
I am an online reseller. I sell on eBay, Amazon.
Okay.
But I'm also looking for an executive assistant position right now, so I'm just here to network, meet some people, and learn.
Okay. All right. All right. So, just a little bit about me. I have spent 2 decades in business-to-business sales, account management, and sales management. I have done everything from paging, that's when I started, so that'll date me, to sell, radio, cell phones, office supplies, MRO supplies, advertising. Come on in. Hey, how are you? But, so 2 decades of business-to-business sales, account management, and I loved it. I loved every single moment of it. I pretty much say I was born that way because my mother was in outside sales. My grandfather was Yellow Pages back in the day when Yellow Pages was about the only advertising besides the newspaper and radio you could do. And he was always the top in his company throughout the nation. So I didn't have a choice in the matter, I don't think. So when I joined my last company, I said I would either retire with them or I would start my own business. And I was looking for a different trajectory for my professional career. And leading sales teams, one of the things that, actually the thing that I loved the most was coaching and helping to see my sales team grow in their professional nature. They had to do the hard work, and they had to be open to it. That I enjoyed it so much, and I've mentored fellow sales professionals and throughout my career, and I just am passionate about it. So I really saw a need because a lot of salespeople, sales teams, they're so focused on their product and service. This is what we have. We got to get out there and sell it, right? Well, the thing about that is that doesn't work in today's market space. Quite honestly, it really hasn't worked for quite some time, but change is hard. So we've got to focus on our customers. So instead of our product and service, we have to focus on what problem we're solving for them with our solutions or our product and service. So people might have say that I have sold commodities in the past, but I never sold commodities. I sold solutions. Because you can go and get copy paper from anywhere down the street for 10 cents or $1 cheaper, right? That's not what we were selling. It's not what I was in the market for. So I'm so passionate about coaching and really shifting the trajectory of the way customers view sales professionals, because inevitably we're viewed as, anybody seen Glenn Ross? Everybody seen that? Okay, boilerplate. So we're inevitably viewed as that, and I'm super passionate about changing that. But the only way that we can do that is if we go and meet our customers where they are. And so tell me, what experience has anyone had in terms of training or solutions going out there and marketing to your customers and sitting in front of your customers and customer focused? Or what are you thinking in terms of customer centric? What does that mean to you?
Making sure you're aligned where your buyers in the sales cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Anybody else?
Understanding their challenges or their initiatives are for the year, for the roadmap, and meet your solution where they are.
Absolutely, absolutely. So how would you do that?
asking a lot of questions.
I was actually, my boyfriend, I met his boss, and we were sitting outside by the fire pit and all that, and I'm just peppering him with questions. My boyfriend is not, he's in tech, he's not in sales, right? And so I'm just asking all kinds of questions, trying to get to know him, and he's like, "Were you an attorney?" And I'm like, I'm like, "No, I'm in sales." So, with that, today we have a short period of time together, so we're just really gonna hit the highlights. We're gonna focus a lot on research and prospecting, because you only have one chance to make a good first impression. So your research is the biggest part of that, right? And prospecting. So we're gonna hit the highlights. I get way more in depth. So my company, SalesShift, we do 360-degree sales assessments based around sales teams and organizations. We do workshops, seminars, and individual coaching as well. The key thing with any training that you do, whether it be in sales or product, you can always see that if you don't follow it up with consistent feedback and coaching with your sales team, they're going to forget it within 30 days after that initial workshop. So another thing, because I know salespeople so well, I'm kind of changing that a little bit. Instead of sitting in a 3-day 8 to 5 where you have your sales team doing like this because they're waiting for the next break so they can get out and make a call or follow up with a customer, and they're like, I need to be out selling, not learning how to sell. Anybody? I see a lot of heads shaking on that. So I really want to change that to where it is a 3 to 4 hour, 1 day a week over a consistent period of time, where you also get feedback and then consistent coaching, so we can really hone in, and it's not just a 3-day one and done, and then 30 days later they're back to their old way of doing things. Does that make sense? So this really, it did not surprise me, but the height of this. So 96% of decision makers are more likely to consider a company's product or service if sales professionals have a clear understanding of their business needs. 96%. That is a huge number. And 51% of decision makers rank trust as the top factor in working with a sales professional. If you look at the flip side, 79% of decision makers are least likely to engage with sales professionals who lack knowledge of their company. And 76% of decision makers will not engage if the products or services represented are irrelevant. How many times have maybe you been marketed to, because think about this, we're all consumers, right? How many times, and believe me, being an entrepreneur, a new entrepreneur, I am getting hit up on LinkedIn like you would not believe, and they know nothing about my business, right? And honestly, a lot of them, it's irrelevant to what my market space is, right? So we've got to, as we go out as sales professionals, we really need to be that, right? We're not salespeople. We're not out there in the boilerplate trying to get. We're there to sell, and we're there to increase revenue for our companies as well as profitability. But what we're not there to do is push ourselves and push our products and services on a customer before we even know if it's relevant to them, right? So research. Let me show of hands how many people do research on their customers. Okay, that's a good amount. However, I will tell you that I would venture to say 80% of sales professionals do not research their company or the company that they're prospecting to before they start prospecting to them. About the same percentage do not even do any type of research prior to their first meeting with their customers. And if you're not doing research on your customers prior to engaging with them, you are missing a huge opportunity, because as those statistics show, companies are more likely to engage with you if you have a clear understanding of their business, of their company, and of their needs. So this is something that is fantastic. So this is a winning vendor. So the winning vendors, 73% demonstrated a stronger knowledge of our company and its needs. 73%. The timeliness, it's what we like to call the good old follow-up, right? And then the sales team had more insights about their company and their needs, 56%. But you see very important piece of this is demonstrated a stronger knowledge of our company and its needs. Now, prior to going in, before you have a meeting with a customer, you can get to know a lot about them, but then you're also going to co-create with them the insights and what their needs are, because you'll have a 50,000 foot view from what your research shows you. But once you get in and meet with them, then you get even more in depth, right? So first and foremost, do your homework. Social media. So on the flip side of this, consumers, the reason that this is also more important is because businesses have more choices and are typically 50% along in their buying process before they even engage a sales professional at one of the companies. They've also narrowed it down to maybe 3 or 4 at that point because they have information at their fingertips, right? So think about that too. So when you're doing your homework, LinkedIn, if you're in the B2B market space, or you're selling into businesses, if you're in the business to consumer market space, Facebook, looking at the analytics and things like that. But LinkedIn, if you are not on LinkedIn and you are not posting constant content on LinkedIn, you're missing a huge opportunity. I'm going to show you a stat in just a few minutes about how many buyers, when they're out there and they're vetting vendors, are looking at LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a big portion of this. So when I look at LinkedIn, so I follow the companies that I'm prospecting to. I also look at the people within the organization. So who here does that? Who's on LinkedIn and utilizing LinkedIn? Okay. Give me some examples of how you've recently utilized LinkedIn to prospect.
So we did a web session with some content and people that attended. Some of them attended with verbiage as their contact information, and so I went out and researched into LinkedIn to see if these people are actually legitimate in high position,
Okay.
and then understanding where they fall in their company.
Okay, where they are.
And look at their background, where they came from, how long they've been there, what kind of projects have they done in the past.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's good. No, that's great. Facebook is, for those of you in the B2C market space, Facebook is huge in that arena. YouTube. So I post videos every week. I do a weekly video that is 2 to 3 minute video content that I link back to my blog. I house everything on YouTube, and then of course I post it on social media. So, so you can go to YouTube because most companies nowadays have a video for their clients, right? So they're doing some sort of demonstration, or they're marketing to that. So you can understand how they're going to market with their clients. Instagram and Twitter. Twitter, I don't know, I'm on it, but for my company, and I posted up on there. But my main focus for my business is LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Company website. This has so much. Even if you just have a 10-minute span of time to research, go to the company website. Look at their about page. How long have they been in business? What are their core values? Look at white papers and case studies, especially. I'll give you an example. In my last role as an individual contributor, I had a property management company, and they accounted for about $1.5 million in annual revenue for me. And when I took that company over and started managing that account, I went on, looked at their website, looked at their white papers and their case studies, looked at their locations, because I had a whole portfolio, 1,400 locations, big buildings, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I didn't use it initially, but I ended up using it. And how I used it was some of the people were like kind of naysayers. We had a national contract, all that good stuff, but they were like, we can break it up and we can go do this and we can go do this. And so instead of being the consolidated supplier that we were for them, they were looking at breaking it up to save money. Well, in hard costs, not necessarily, but I referenced and I pulled out their case study that actually had to do with them and their client that I was helping them to serve, right? And their case study with that client was all about consolidation of suppliers, was all about making things easier and making things, really making sure that their client was taken care of, but making it easier for their client, correct? So I pulled that out and I started speaking to that. Well, this is what you did for your client, and this is how you were able to do that. You were able to do that in part with our help with a consolidated supplier. Walk me through why you think it's going to be easier for your client and for you if you do this. Well, needless to say, they didn't do it, right? After much discussion of that. So while it might not be something that you utilize in necessarily a meeting or whatever at your initial meeting or whatever, it can be arsenal for you later on. So, the internet. In the news, who here has ever done the Google, like you followed it so you get updates when any of your companies in the news? Yeah, I stopped doing that because I was getting inundated with emails, but that's a good thing. If you're not worried about that, that's a good thing to do. But I also look at in the news as well. But then if you just look and see what pulls up, I'll give you an example. I was prospecting to a company in Mississippi. They were a healthcare company. And they, and I'm like, okay, let me do a little bit of research before I start calling on them. Come to find out, they had been hit with a $300,000 fine the year before because of C. diff. You may know what C. diff is? It's a really bad infection caused by maybe shoddy environmental practices, the kill rate and clean. So what I happened to be looking to prospecting them for was for environmental services and for janitorial sanitation products. And we had just released a product that had a 3-second kill rate. So I took that, I didn't utilize that in my talk track with them. Hey, I hear you got hit with this big old $300,000 fine. How about we talk? What I did say was that we have helped, we understand the challenges that healthcare facilities like yours are facing. We've had other clients that have had outbreaks and yada, yada, yada. Love to set up a meeting with you, right? But I knew that would be a key component for them. They'd be looking for that, and I had a meeting within a week with them. So it's just knowledge is power, right? Information is power. Industry trends. Anybody look up their customer's industry? Okay, this is one, please, if you take nothing else, please go and do this. Because if you look up, say if you are targeting manufacturing clients, look up manufacturing industry trends. What the challenges are being faced. In manufacturing in particular, there's going to be a lot around safety. But in what your client's particular industry is in, whether it be property management, whether it be retail, whatever the case may be, look and see what trends are on for 2019. What challenges the industry is facing. If property management, one of the challenges that they always face is having to do more with less people in the job. The client that I was telling you about with 1,400 locations, they had 50 technicians across the Southeast that had to service 1,400 locations. 50. Talk about doing more with less, right? So, and their competition. What is their competition doing? Most clients want to know what their competition is doing, and if they're doing something different than what they are. So, and I'm sorry, are you not able to see? I feel like I'm. So, what questions at this point do we have?
You use Sales Navigator, LinkedIn, Sales Navigator?
I do. I do. It's a great tool. Are you using that now?
I'm starting to use it.
Okay. What success have you found with it?
I just started to play with it.
Okay.
I'm using it 30-day trial.
Okay.
So, see how.
The good old free trial?
Yeah, but I did use it for an event that we had in Jacksonville, and it gave me access to people and send messages directly for the event. So I invited people directly to the Sales Navigator. We had obviously people actually show up. So
Oh, nice. Well, that's success.
Yep.
All right.
Can you speak to how this works when you're moving out of a kind of a need space into a want space? Like if you think about fashion, right? It's not because you have this crisis and we're solving it for you, but
Mhm.
it's this is cute, or this is what we make. How can sales kind of hit where you're not solving a problem?
So that's a good question, right? Because so I would say more go towards the want space, right? So if you have do you have a particular demographic in mind?
I think we're thinking about say women 35 to 55, home, moderate income.
Okay. So you need to meet them where they're at. Facebook would be a prime example of that. And anybody here follow Gary Vaynerchuk? Anybody? I love him. When you're looking at the demographic, you and I spoke before, so I know you're probably dealing with you're dealing with several different areas with that. Is it all fashion, or is it
fashion in terms of home fashion,
Okay.
clothing fashion, but still in that visual design space?
So the commercial that I think of is I think it's Amazon, where they're visualizing themselves and that he's visualizing himself with that headboard or whatever, and it's like, or then there's the mother that she's like seeing herself because it's not necessarily solving a problem, but it is solving a want. And how can you go towards that demographic, and what are their trends? I would look at that trends in that demographic in terms of the home fashion and home goods and what that looks like. And especially in particular, because you're looking at particular areas too, right? Like Birmingham proper, is that right? So I would look at that and see what type of demographics, and there's a lot out there when it comes to business to consumer on that. So I would think about that and how you can really come in and focus on what the trends are in that. And because you can look at that as an industry, right? That particular demographic. Does that make sense? Okay. Did I answer it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you're trying to look at competition for a prospect, often there's a lot of competitors. It just depends on the space. Do you have any tricks for honing in who they consider their competitors?
So what I look at a lot in the competition is where the person I'm prospecting to, the company I'm prospecting to, where they sit in their market space.
Okay.
So where do they sit? Are they considered number 1?
Got it.
Or are they considered number 10 and they're trying to get to say this, and who are they out there to be and what that looks like and how they're marketing to it? That's what I look at a lot in terms of that. But also too, if you actually service one of their competitors with your particular product, you know their industry, you're familiar, you have familiarity within the industry, then that's what I look. I don't necessarily reference that we work with so and so because that's a legal deal, but that hey, I work with another company that is in your industry, that's in your space, one of your competitors. We have had great success with this, or this, right? So, but I do like to look at where they sit in the market space. If they're number 1, number 5, I look at what their revenue is in comparison to. I look at a lot, and I might get a little bit more granular than what you want to, but again, you never know when you have compiled that information when you might need to pull that out and say, hey, I reference this. Because I even use it, even if it's not directly related to the solution that I'm providing, I actually reference it in business meetings. Hey, I saw you guys just won this great project, congratulations. Or, hey, I see you're expanding into this particular area. Or, hey, I see you finally beat so-and-so, your competitor, you serve them. So it's really about conveying to them that you're coming to them from an authentic place and that you care about their business. It's not just, obviously you want to marry things and you want to have information that's going to bring about and tell the story of either solving a problem or solving a want or what have you. But building that relationship with your customer is the key to that. And a lot of that information, I think, helps to do that in terms of just showing that you care about your customer. But you actually have to care about them, right? So, anybody else?
Well, I guess my question would be, I work for Alabama Power Employees Credit Union,
Okay.
and And so we're a closed field of membership. So there's like a bank or credit union pretty much on every corner. But with us, not everyone can join. You have to be associated in some way with one of our select partners or one of the Alabama Power, Southern Nuclear, Southern Company, or something like that.
Okay.
So that would be the only way that you can join, or join through a family member. But I guess my question would be to you, when you're talking to businesses about being a select partner, when they don't really know a whole lot about you, because we don't do advertising, we don't do the billboards, we don't do commercials because we don't have to because of Alabama Power,
Right,
and
right.
we're closed field of membership. But how do you meet with the businesses and attract them when they don't know a whole lot about you because they don't see you on TV, when they don't really know, they hadn't got a flyer in the mail, you know what I mean? So most people that know a whole lot about us, they're associated with us in some way, or they've heard about it through mom, dad, or grandma, grandpa.
Okay.
So how do you kind of break the ice or the mold with the businesses that you go out and say, hey, would you like to be one of our select partner? Here are our benefits, but they don't really know a whole lot about you other than what I'm saying to them, hey, here are your benefits.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. When you're talking about the partnership with businesses, right? So you're wanting them to be a partner with you. What are they being partners with you about?
Well, they're being partners to be able to have those same benefits as somebody that works for Alabama Power.
So they're employees.
They're employees.
Okay. So any particular business, so take away because you don't market, so they're not necessarily familiar, but you don't want to start out with your benefits and features, right?
Okay.
What you want to start out with is their benefits. What are they gaining out of this, right? So that's how you start off the conversation. We have a partner program. Now, you do have the power of Alabama Power name behind you, right? So that in itself is a great thing. But I would really focus on, if they have a particular amount of employees, you can get that kind of information, how many employees, because this is about benefits to their employees. This is about employee retention rates. The more benefits companies can bring to their employees, the better, so they can retain their talent, right? That's a big thing. So I would think about that, but I would look at and see what they, kind of from their business perspective, how they take care of their employees. You can see that on their websites typically, like what their focus is, if their diversity is a big thing for them, diversity and inclusion, making sure that they have the top benefits for their employees. You can see a lot in terms of like their careers when you go to their careers tab on this particular one to look at that. But employee retention is a huge thing. So I would come to it from their aspect of the benefits of being able to harness the power of a credit union like that and what that means for their employees and then thereby for their business. Does that make sense? Okay. Awesome, great questions. Anybody else? Okay. All right, so prospecting. So after you've done your homework, and by the way, guys, I can totally go down a research rabbit hole. I have been known to and so I'm not saying everybody's busy, so I'm not saying spend an hour to 2 hours researching. But if you can spend 15 to 20 minutes just looking up, prior to engaging with a prospect, I'm going to give you an example. So my best friend, she's been in business to business sales and account management as long as I have. Well, she's been with her company for 11 years now, and she just recently got a whole new book of business. And so, but she has 80 accounts. Like, that's a lot of people to get to, right? And so she was out on client meetings, and she's like, well, there's this customer, right by this. I'll just drop in and see if I can schedule an appointment with them, right? So she goes in, she's thinking, she does no research, she's thinking because of the name of their business that they're an attorney firm. And she goes in and they're in healthcare and they manage like 14 facilities. Well, the conversation that she was prepared to have, she ended up not being able to have it. She did not know what conversation to have with them because she went in thinking an attorney firm, and guess what? The person that she was going to schedule a meeting with could see her right then. So she's like sitting in front of them, and what she brought with her was not what she needed. So, and this is a current client, so they're already doing business, but obviously, you know, the goal is to increase business, right? So she called me and she's like, Elisa, she's like, damn it, you're, you know, the research thing, because she had just, her and I was telling her about what I was doing. And anyway, so, I mean, we all do it. I mean, it's just, but inevitably, the one customer that you pop in on and like, hey, I'm in the area and I want to see if I can get an appointment with them, and you haven't done the research, so you can't have like a really thoughtful conversation with them about their business. Inevitably, that's going to happen. It's just the way of the world. Has anybody ever had that happen to them? I know I have. Okay. So, ask yourself these questions. Why does your customer need your solution? Why do they need them? What problem is it solving for them? Or what want is it solving for them? And how does your solution solve that problem, right? So think about this through the research process and throughout the entire sales process that you're continuing, whether it be prospecting, you're in the prospecting phase, or why are you coming to this customer? Is this because think about the percentage of the irrelevancy, right? They're not going to, you need to make sure that you're prospecting to the correct customer that your solution or product is relevant to in either their industry or business. So think about these things as you're going through them. So, prospecting, LinkedIn, Facebook, obviously prospect Facebook with your particular market. Email, calls, in-person networking. Now there's a lot of different ways with prospecting, and I have to say that instead of prospecting, like people have, do you set out a particular portion of your day, of your week to prospect?
Yes.
Okay. What day do you particularly do it?
Monday or Tuesday, a couple hours. I make sure I at least do that much every week.
Okay. Who else?
I normally try to do it midweek, like on a Wednesday, normally midweek.
Midweek on a Wednesday. Okay. And when you're prospecting, is that calling, emailing, following up? What does that look like? Calling. Okay.
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
Are they people that you've engaged with prior to, or is it straight out cold calls?
Almost everybody is someone I know, and I've got a big list of people that I'm working through.
Right. What do you do, by the way?
Digital marketing.
Digital marketing. Okay. All right. So when you're prospecting, so 52% of buyers said LinkedIn had the biggest impact of their research process. So when I think of prospecting in today's world, it is obviously your cold calls, your warm calls, all of that, all the stuff that we all do. But it's so different now, because what you have to do is you have to make yourself relevant. And when I say yourself, I mean yourself as well as your company, right? Your company typically, does everybody here's company have a LinkedIn page and all of that, and they're posting things on there on a continual basis? Okay. So sharing what your companies are posting, but you also have to build relevant content for you. You have to build a personal brand for what you're doing and what you're solving, and how relevant that can be for your customers. So think about that too. Posting content on LinkedIn, and posting and making sure that when they look you up, you called them and say they don't know you, and you called them or whatever, and they look you up on LinkedIn, and then they're going to look up your company. More than likely, they're going to look up your company first, but then they're going to look you up. See testimonials. That's something I'm working on right now, is building a whole list of testimonials to put on my LinkedIn profile and my company page, so that, because that is very relevant to customers. They look at that a lot. So connecting with people on LinkedIn. As an entrepreneur, I have been getting a lot of connection requests for LinkedIn. A lot of them. So I accept everybody, because I don't care if you're trying to sell to me or not, because if you're trying to sell to me, then you're in sales, so that makes you relevant for me. I mean, that's fine. Inevitably, 2 hours later, I get an email and I'm being pitched something. I am gonna, hey, y'all do whatever you want. I'm not here to poo-poo anything, but what I am here to say is you have to think about what you feel as a consumer when somebody's selling to you. I automatically know that the only reason that person connected with me was to pitch me something. And that's not how we need to come to our clients, right? Because the whole purpose is to be client-centric and customer-focused and to build a trusted business partnership with them and to be their trusted business advisor, right? You're not going to be able to do that by connecting and then 2 hours later pitching them something. Because why are you pitching them? You don't even know if they, because most of the people that are trying to pitch me, I don't need what they're selling. So I would say connect, and a couple of weeks later or a week later, send them an email direct to their inbox asking for a meeting. But I would advise against connecting and then trying to sell. So has anybody ever had that where you had a connection request and then did you respond to it? Right.
I changed mine. I used to be one that would connect with everyone and then accept connections, and then I worked some with LinkedIn on the sales navigator piece and their account management team, and I kind of took a page out of their book and I cleaned out all of my connections that I can at least say, yes, I know you, and introduce you. So I flipped it a little bit to say I want to serve others, and so if they come to my page and they say, hey, I saw that you are connected to this person, I can confidently say, yeah, I met with them at least once.
Right.
And I say, hey, here's this person. I can't tell you how many times I go to my friends and like, do you know this person? Nope, just connected with them. So, that's what I've done differently.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. That's a great point. For me, I feel like because I'm creating content and posting content on a consistent basis, that I don't care about how many likes or share, or I don't care how many likes I get or anything like that. But I know that at one point somebody's going to see my content and it's going to be relevant to them or relevant to the space they're in, right? So, and then again, I've already been talking about that post relevant content. We already talked about InMail, and I mean you can InMail and request a meeting if you say you don't have their email address. It's just not the connect and pitch, right? That's not necessarily what I would do. Obviously, we talked about the research and follow the company, their company page on Facebook, and then make sure in testimonials we talk about that. Anybody else have any best practices for LinkedIn that they've done or they had success with? Anybody?
Well, I do have a question.
Yes.
Not necessarily pertaining directly to LinkedIn. You mentioned that you were in project management, and I own an apartment complex. I have a vacant unit that's been vacant for almost 2 months now. And the management company that I have, they have put the vacancy out on Craigslist, which doesn't apparently work for my apartment complex at least. What's the best way to reach out to potential tenants for vacancies that you have in your experience? And I don't think LinkedIn is the answer for what I'm trying to do.
I would absolutely say Facebook would be a great one for that. Craigslist, I don't know about the Craigslist. I would say Facebook and Facebook Marketplace especially would be a good one. And then you can do. I actually recently did a Facebook ad, and I set a budget of like $60. It reached I think it was 1,800 people within the Birmingham area. So you might want to try that too. At a small budget, I mean, I know Craigslist is free, but and especially if you're trying to hit a specific demographic, you can see the analytics of who is looking at that particular ad.
That was my next question. So with Facebook ads, you can specify your demographic as well as your location.
It's particularly now. I didn't go really that far deep into it. So I don't know enough to speak to that particular, but it was the Birmingham area. It was specific to Birmingham. So, but you might can dig a little bit deeper and see if you can do that. But I was just more focused about all of Birmingham. So, and that's the reason I did that.
How do they charge? Is it per day for the average?
No, what they do is you set a budget, And then they do ads, and it came out in like I think $25 increments here and there. And then I had a campaign end date, so my end date was like say the 5th, and so it was cut off at that point. So, but I said my budget was this, use this amount, and there you go. And what was really cool about that is I got to also see analytics. So I got to see like 85.4% was women who looked at it, right? And then I saw the age groups as well. So you got to see a lot of cool analytics with that as well for future ads with that.
Good information. Thank you.
Anybody else? So, email, we already talked about that. Don't sell. Remember the why, what, and how. And I always keep in-mails and emails short, sweet, and to the point. 2 to 3 lines and customer focused. Like that healthcare customer that I was talking to you about. I sent them an email, said, hey, I've worked with other healthcare clients. I have other healthcare clients who are facing similar challenges in environmental services. I'd love to sit down with you on Wednesday at 10:30 to see what challenges you're facing and how we might be able to help you with that. Bada bing, bada bang, right? And inevitably, I will get, like, it's usually around 30 to 40% of the time, I'll get it back, it's either, no, this date's not good, how about this date? Don't be afraid of putting a date and time, because the date and time they're like, oh no, I do want to talk to her, but I'm not available at this point, right? So both email and email, I do the same thing. I think about that in all ways, pretty much the same, about 2 to 3 lines, short, sweet, and to the point, remembering the why, what, and how. Why am I reaching out to them? What problem am I solving for them, or think that I can solve for them? Then I have this asterisk because this is when you actually get the appointment, right? So one thing, they respond back to me, I say, that's great. I'll send an Outlook invite or whatever medium you use for your calendar. Who else should be included? Ask that. Who else should be included? Because there are, in most decision-making processes, there are anywhere from 1 to 6 people involved in decision-making. The last statistic, I just heard a new statistic the other day that was 6.8 people involved in a decision-making. So what you don't want to do is get in front of this person and not ask who else needs to be involved, and then you're sitting in front of one person and then you find out that 3 other people have input into this, because each person is going to have a different objective and a different goal, right? So, so you want to get as much of the influencers in as you possibly can on that first meeting, so you can start building relationships with them, finding out what their goals for the project or whatever it may be. And then when I send out the invite, I send an agenda, what we've talked about. So in our conversation, if we're on the phone and I've set the meeting, or email, set the meeting, I put in bullet points about what the agenda is for the meeting, and then I ask them to add anything that they would like to discuss. This is especially important if you are going to need specific information when you're in that meeting, right? So if you need like usage on something, or you need certain specifications or what have you. What this does is it shortens your sales cycle, because if you don't ask for it, then what is going to end up happening is you're in the meeting, they're saying, okay, I'll get back to you with that information, but you have to have that information before you start compiling, your solutions for them, right? So this helps to shorten your selling cycle. If you can get all of that information, but sometimes, I totally forgot, it happens all the time. But at least if you ask for it, they're going to be more willing to. Typically, I actually had one customer, I could tell she was absolutely OCD, because let me tell you something, she came, everything was tabbed, it was like, and I was like, can all my customers be like you, please? But, so just some tips about that. So I'm going to give, this is an example of an email that I got. So read this and tell me what you guys think about this. First thoughts. I had this actually was a recent connection, connected with me. 2 hours later, I got this.
Do they know
They
you?
don't know what you do.
They do not know what I do. They do not reference anything about my company whatsoever, do they? Nothing. It's all about them. They connected and then they pitched without knowing anything about me, anything about my business, anything at all, right? So, of course, I'm not going to respond to that, but I might respond back, hey, you want some sales coaching? Hey, here's some tips for you. But, again, I connect with everybody. But, so, actually, before I go on to this one, so I'm going to set this next one up. This was, I was actually at a networking event. We'll talk about networking here in just a minute. But I was actually at a it was a luncheon at the BDA. And there was a gentleman speaking. He was president, founder, I think, of an ad agency. Great speaker. He was all talking about brand. And at the time, I had just left my company to start my own business, and I am all like going crazy thinking about branding myself and like how I know I need to get my brand out there, but how the hell do I do that? So I'm spinning. So I asked the question to him when he opened the question and answer segment. I asked him, I am like all over the place with this. How do I hone in on what my brand should be? And he was like, well, good news is you're not alone. Even billion-dollar companies have the same problem. And I'm like, okay, that's not helping me very much. How do I brand it, right? So anyway, he gave me a couple of tips. But after that was over and we were all, chit-chatting amongst ourselves, a lady walked up to me. Her name was Michaela. And she said, go watch this video. For the life of me, I can't remember which video it is right now. But it was an excerpt of the TED Talk. And I think it was called The Why. And she said, go watch this. It will help. I said, okay. And she gave me her card, and I gave her mine. And so I went and watched it, loved it. But still, this little 20-minute video was not helping me with my branding. So she worked for Modern Brand, the Modern Brand company. So again, when she came up to me, she was not pitching me about Modern Brand and the company and all that, because that's exactly what they do. She just told me to watch a video. So what did I do? I was like, okay, so I emailed her. Well, she happens to be a project manager, so she works with a specific client. She's not, she doesn't do business development or does the branding or anything like that. So so I emailed her because I had already sat down with 2 other branding companies, and I emailed her. She said, reach out to Michael. He's one of the partners. He'll get back to you. So I emailed him, and it was one line. Hi, I'm looking for some help. I'm interviewing branding companies. If you could please let me know a good time for us to speak. This was the email that he sent back to me. So that's much more relevant. He hadn't talked to me, but he took the time to go and look at my website. He looked at my LinkedIn. He read what I was doing. When I talked to him, I actually talked to him Friday the 22nd. When I talked to him and had the conversation with him, the first thing he said to me was, okay, so I'm going to shut up and listen because I read your blog. Because in my blog, one of my blog posts, I had, you need to listen more than you speak when you're in a meeting with the client, right? So I thought that was great. Another thing he did, and something to think about too in our conversation, was I asked him what he thought of my name, my company name. So my company name was not Sales Shift at the beginning. It was the Sales Charm. So So I said, I need you to be honest. I need you to tell me what you think of my name. And he goes, and he asked me where the origin of that came from. And I said, well, initially I was just going to be focused on individual women sales professionals. That, of course, has changed in how I want to scale. I'm going to be dealing with sales teams, all that kind of good stuff. He misspoke and said my company name as the Southern Charm twice in our conversation. And that had been something I'm worried about because I am Southern, right? And so I was worried about that. So I said, well, he said, you need to rethink your name. He said, because you're going to be dealing with this, this, and this. And I said, well, and I'm also going to be dealing with the fact that they're saying Southern Charm as opposed to Sales Charm, and I'm not a charm school. But because he challenged me on that, and he was truthful with me, he wasn't worried. It was not about, I better tell her what she wants to hear. He was truthful with me about that. I hired him and signed the contract because of that. Because the other two companies were not giving me the in-depth information that I needed. They were not. They were worried about getting my business, right? That's what and not that they were bad, and I'm sure they're great companies, but this approach is what got the contract for me. So, what's the definition of a cold call, Pete?
A random call?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, there's a lot of definitions out there for cold calls. And I'm sorry, where are we on time? I do not have my phone in front of me.
Give us 10 seconds.
It's almost 1 o'clock?
It is 1 o'clock.
Oh, it is 1 o'clock? So I don't want to keep, if you guys want to stay, I only have a few more things. If y'all want to go, please. I know everybody's had a busy day. So phone calls and in-person calls. So back in the old days, it was the cold calling thing. You needed to get out there and hit as many, or you need to make 50 phone calls in a day, right? And they were truly cold calls because you had never met the person or what have you, right? Gone are those days. It's quality versus quantity, right? And you need to know your prospects. I will say I have signed several between $250,000 and $500,000 deals by 2 cold calls that I made. But it was because I was in the right place at the right time. So I would say that is not the norm on it, right? So just with phone calls, be prepared. I'll give you an example. This is a bad moment. I had been trying to get in touch with this particular person. It was a hospitality group, and I had been trying to get in front of them and call them. And he picked up the phone one day. I was so not prepared for that because I was prepared to leave another voicemail like I had and all of that. So he picked up the phone and I said, and I'm like, this is early in my sales career. And he goes, and he's like, I'm sorry. He's like, but you can't help us. I'm like, he was like, and I said, well, what if we could save you 15% annually? And as soon as I said it, I wanted to put it right back in my mouth because I am selling on price. Oh my Lord, because if you sell on price, you will lose it on price, right? Every day of the week. So I said, and I was like, and he goes, and what his response to me was, no, you can't, and hung up. And I never got an appointment with him. I never got in front of him because I was not prepared for him to actually pick up the phone, and I wasn't prepared for that. And so and then when I went, when I started selling price, I was so mad at myself. But anyway, so with the phone call, same as the email, short, sweet, and to the point, because if you're catching them, they're not prepared for your phone call. Keep it simple, keep it sweet, follow up. Hey, I sent you an email last week, about this, and this. Are you available, next Wednesday at 10:30, short, sweet, and to the point, and then go from there. Always specify a date and time as well. In-person calls, I have done drop-bys where maybe I didn't know who the decision maker was, and so my purpose for that call was to find out who it was and to find out who was in charge of that. Not to sit down and talk to them and start pitching them right then. It was just to gather information about certain things, and you'd be amazed at what you can find out if you can build a good relationship with the gatekeeper. But that enables you to go back and have a warm call, right? So may I please speak with Miss Mary Smith? So it enables you to do that. Always leave contact information and always follow up. Who does in-person calls? Like when you're calling on somebody, say you haven't been able to get in touch with, you haven't been able to get in front of them. Does anybody do any of that, or is it mainly you do? Okay. So how do you conduct those calls?
I bring a bag of goodies.
Bag of goodies? What kind of goodies do you bring?
Usually a snack or some popcorn and do something cheesy, like just popping in to say hi and break the ice up a little bit.
Okay.
So it just depends on the prospect I'm calling on or trying to get in. With the executives, a little bit different, but
Oh yeah. If it's an executive, it's different. If it's an end user, that's a different deal altogether, right? So what's your intention when you're making those calls?
scheduling a time to follow back up, knowing that I came in unannounced and trying to
Right.
have time.
Right, and that's a good point. That was always mine when I was doing that is because I'm being respectful of their time, because if you're trying to bust in through the door and get in front of them, you're number one, you're not going to. Number two, unless they are like, oh yeah, come on in, and then they're pretty much you're going to be what they call the time waster. In the South we have a lot of those, right? They're like, because they have all the time in the world. Yeah, sit down and talk to me, especially if you're bringing them popcorn and goodies, right? But the networking. Who was at the Mixed Draws Lunch and Learn? Does anybody at the Mixed Draws Lunch and Learn? Well, I do. So it was fantastic. I love those ladies. What they have going on is great. Who here likes to go to the after hours and networking and all that? Okay. So a lot of people don't, but and I will have to say I used to be of the early in my career, I didn't like it because I was just, inevitably you go in and there's little cliques, little people, they've known each other for years, they're talking, right, and it can be intimidating to walk up to people who you don't know, who are, in a group of long-term friends, it seems like, right? But now I don't care. But I have a goal or intention for whatever networking. I go to any type of networking event that I can just because I want to build relationships in the Birmingham community. It's not necessarily, my intention is not to go and get business from a networking event, right? Because I might meet 5 people and they may not have a need for what I do. But guess what? If I build an authentic relationship and we have a great conversation and we exchange cards and we connect and all that, they might know somebody who does. And so I have a goal or intention, hey, I want to meet 5 people, or, hey, I want to learn more about nonprofits because I want to get into that space, or I actually want to volunteer because I believe in that a lot, right? But be authentic, make sure and meet new people. A lot of people go to networking events with a buddy, right? And they never leave that buddy's side. So make sure that you go and you meet new people and you break away and say, hey, okay, I'm going over here, you go over there, especially if you're with the same company. I will have to say that's actually a good technique. That's right, go across that. But get to know the person and then keep it short, have a good conversation, in-depth conversation if you can, exchange cards, and then move on, right? And then always follow up. This is something that whether it be follow up after a meeting, whether it be follow up after networking, whether it be follow up after, hey, you've had an initial call with somebody, follow up is the key. You meet that person, connect with them on LinkedIn, and send them a short note, say, hey, it was great to meet you. I look forward to always follow up because follow up is key. Anybody have any good networking events that they go to? They'd like to share?
Network after work.
Network after work, where is that? Is that in downtown? Or?
Different. They have it, I think, once a month. I think it's coming up maybe around the 23rd. But they moved it to different areas, so they might have it up at the Ellington Hotel, Rooftop Bar, or just different places.
Neat. Who puts that on?
I think that's the name of the organization, but they have different actual local, people that lead it in the area.
Okay. All right.
But it's a really good one.
Network after work is what that is? Okay.
I think you can find them either on Eventbrite or the Meetup app.
Awesome.
Probably the Meetup app.
Okay.
I have a slightly different question. I apologize, I have to leave.
No, go ahead.
But Modern Brand chose what brand for your business?
No, so I went through we sat down and did a 3-hour brand roadmap session where we went through and they were asking me all types of questions about, my intentions, what I saw, what was important to me, what type of customers. I mean, in depth. And then they built out a brand roadmap for me. And then we kind of went back and forth on it. There were some things that I wanted to add, some things I wanted deleted. And then they did that. Now, in that, that's where kind of my name Sales Shift came from, because in that roadmap session, I said shift a lot because I was wanting to shift perspective. I was wanting to shift the customer's perspective of the way sales professionals were viewed. I was wanting to shift salespeople's perspective into the customer focused type of thing. So I was saying shift a lot. He goes, you might want to think about shift. And so then I kind of went that, because listen, I had literally a notebook of that, of all kind of different names. It was ridiculous. And I wasn't married to the sales charm, and I knew it might have been problematic, but so it wasn't like I was afraid to let that go. It was just like, picking a name for your business and then branding it, and then you're going to have a logo. So you're committing to that name, and that was like a huge space. So that's how that worked out.
And
Yeah.
what does your logo end up being?
Well, I have several ones, but that's one of them.
Okay.
And then I have little watermarks that are S and S. It's very simple. They came to me with several different concepts. Some of them were a little funky, and I kind of liked them, but I was like, I need something that can go along with everything. So,
Thank you.
so anyway, if I could, would you guys be willing to fill out a real quick survey for me? So I just would like some feedback, and then I'd love to hear what type of content that you would like in a workshop or seminar in the future. Okay.